Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ben Adams. I'm from the Wharton Customer Analytics Initiative, and we're going to be doing a webinar today on a exciting new research opportunity, a data set that we're titling Using Purchase History to Identify Customer Projects. With me on the phone are representatives from the data sponsor team, Laura, Will, Amber, and Spencer. Along with me today from the WCAI is Ellie McDonald-Fite and Melissa Hartz. Feel free to use the part of the screen at the bottom to ask any questions, and we will do our best to answer them as we go along. Before we get really detailed into the data, a few operational notes that this webinar is intended for researchers and scholars. It should not be published or presented without explicit permission from WCAI. If you have questions on the program, this data set, or anything related to this webinar, please feel free to reach out to the email address that you see on the screen. If you are a member of the press and would like to talk to one of us about this webinar or the work that we do at WCAI, please feel free to use that email. To get access to the data, you need to submit a proposal to WCAI and the sponsor for approval. We will talk about that more at the end. And this research opportunity is sponsored by a Fortune 500 specialty retailer. While if you are awarded the data, you will be introduced to the sponsor. However, the sponsor must never be named in any publication that you submit. So let's talk a little bit about the data. The data sponsor sells products that the customer uses in complex or multi-step projects. The data sponsor is not, I repeat, not a hobby store or craft store, but it might be helpful to think of along those lines, that at a craft store you might purchase the components of a kit that you're going to assemble into a model airplane, or you might purchase cooking equipment to do a fun holiday craft project. Most of the products that you might purchase or the projects require multiple products purchased over time. So how do you define one of these projects? It could be identified by a group of products being purchased together. In this example that I show you, this is one customer purchasing over time, purchasing at different points, different numbers of products, and perhaps A, B, and C are products that are purchased together that indicate that the customer is working on one particular kind of project. However, it's not that always easy to detect when a product is underway. For example, for example, they might purchase C later than they purchase A and B, and purchasing things in between. Another example of a problem might be that they never purchase C at all. They might purchase it from a competitor, or they might never in their particular version. An example of this might be they already have glue that they purchased years ago, and the model airplane kit that they're doing they don't need to purchase glue from it. Also, to make it even more difficult, the products that comprise any particular project is latent. We do not know exactly which products define a particular project. So it might be A, B, and C, or it could be A, B, C, X, Y, and Z. There's no way to tell naturally. So the key research question that comes out of this is, how should retail transaction data be analyzed or thought about when customers are engaged in projects. This leads to a number of additional questions or related questions. For example, can you determine from purchase history sets of products that seem to be purchased together? Can you assemble a project materials list from this data? Is it possible to detect when a customer is engaged in a project based on their shopping behavior alone? Can you predict the customer's next trip? Or more importantly, what is the next big project? Is there a natural order to projects? Do I move from airplanes to cars? Do I start with cupcakes and then go to cakes? What are the kind of natural order to projects? Can customer groups be targeted for offers or promotions based on their prior behavior or whatever their current project is? Perhaps the sponsor might want to say, I noticed that you are working on model airplanes. Perhaps you might be interested in this other product. Or can we identify which projects or services involved with a project are being purchased elsewhere? Can you determine the share of wallet just from the purchase data? So that gives you a sense of what we might be interested in looking at. Let's talk a little bit about the data itself. It is fairly straightforward retail purchase data. It's divided into these 5 sets. The people, the marketing, the products, the stores, and the transactions there in the middle. I'm going to talk about each of the edge pieces first, and then we'll get into the meat of the transactions. So let's start by looking at the stores. In this data set, there are just shy of 2,000 stores in the United States. The data includes the name of the store open date, the metro location, and the managerial region. For example, there might be a group of stores that are labeled Pacific Northwest. We look at the products. There are approximately 120,000 products in the data set. There are 4 levels of product hierarchy, including department, category, subcategory, and product. The data set contains detailed descriptive names and IDs for each level. So while other attributes about each product are not included in the data set, the names are so descriptive that you could do data mining or text mining to figure out additional things. For example, color is not an attribute that is specific in the data set, but if you were to look for the word green in the product names, you would be able to see multiple products and group products by which products are green. Then for the people, the customers that are purchasing, we did 3 samples from the sponsor's total data set. The first sample are commercial purchasers. There are 20,000 companies, and they tend to be high-volume purchasers. The data set includes the date of the sign-up in one of 3 loyalty programs, if they signed up for one at all. The data visualization that you see here is the number of sign-ups to a loyalty program over the course of our observation window. You'll see that Loyalty Program 1 and Loyalty Program 2 are very similar to one another. I think that the spikes indicate particular incentives to sign up. And the Loyalty Program 3 is a pilot program only offered in limited geographic areas, so you'll see the number is very small. And the number of signups is very small, and in comparison to the other loyalty programs. The second set of people is labeled as known consumer households. These are 20,000 households with confirmed demographic data. They become known when a customer provides an address. The data set explicitly includes age and gender, ethnicity, the estimated household income and net worth, the postal code of the household's address, and other product-related information related to what they might, the kinds of projects that they might work on. The third sample is randomly sampled across all of the customers. There are 20,000 completely randomly selected. They could be a commercial purchaser, they could be a known consumer household, and they could be unknown. If there's any data related to the commercial purchaser or the known consumer household, that is recorded in the data set along with. So you'll see here we have a distribution of demographics, and so that we can see that there are approximately 7,000, just slightly less than 7,000 customers that have an ethnicity from this randomly selected group. I would like to take this moment to remind you, if you have any questions at all about this data set, please feel free to use the box at the bottom of your screen, and we will be answering them as we go along. The last set of this kind of external data is marketing data. We have individual email marketing for addressable customers in the database. It's about a quarter of the total data set. There were slightly over 3,000 campaigns in our observation window, and the data set for this marketing includes the subject line, the delivery date, the campaign name, and the individual household that got that email. I should also bring up that this delivery, the subject line is explicit and is similar to the products in opportunities for data mining and understanding more about the nature of the marketing. So that explains the fringe pieces. We just talked about the people, the products, the stores, and the marketing. And there is a question from the audience. And I think, Will, maybe I can ask you to take this question. Can you talk a little bit more about Loyalty Program 3? How is it different from Loyalty Program 1 and 2? Recognizing that, you know, in a public forum and we're preserving anonymity, can you just talk a little bit in general terms about the differences between 1 and 2 versus 3?
Sure. So the primary difference between the first two loyalty programs and the third is that the third has a limited rollout. The first two are national loyalty programs across the entire retail footprint, and the third is one that is being tried to learn more.
Okay. So would you say it was almost an experiment?
I think that's fair.
Okay. Great. And we do, I should point out to those who are listening that we do have details on the loyalty program to those teams that are awarded the data. And unlike many of our research opportunities, we actually have in-store creatives for promoting these loyalty programs. Those are available. I think we have another question from the audience. Can there be more than one store in the same metro area? So I think I'll take this question in that the metro area can be defined very, very narrowly. For perhaps for a large market like Philadelphia, there might be multiple stores, but for some of the metro areas, it might be Western Maryland. Will, is that an adequate description of how the metro area is defined in this data set?
Yes, I think that's fair.
Great. So yes, again, can there be more than one store in the same metro area? Yes, but the metro areas can be very large or very small depending on the density of the population there. And we should point out, I think, that your store density generally follows the population density, that you have more stores in areas of the country that there are more people. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Fine. We have another question related to those to stores. Are we able to see the number of competitor stores in a metro area? Unfortunately, this data set does not contain any competitor information. So while there are competitors, unfortunately, I would guess, Will, that you would prefer to be a monopoly in your market. But while there are competitors, we don't have any competitive data in this data set. And we have one more question. Do we know the geographic coordinates of people and of stores? So we have in the data set the zip code of all of the customers. Let me go back. For the two known types of customers, the commercial purchasers and the known consumer households, we do have zip codes for all of them. If they are from the random data set, we may or may not have the zip code for those customers. For the stores, we do have specific geographic information. I don't think the zip code is included in the data set, but it was very easy for me to identify given the store name and the metro area, being able to identify where individual stores were. It's just, if it's store number 65 in South Philadelphia, it's not hard to track it down. Okay. So let's talk now more in detail about the meat of the data, the transactions. The data set includes just about 2.5 million transactions over 24 months. This data is at the individual item level. At the basket, we have the details of every basket that every customer brought and purchased. The data set includes specifically the item price and quantity, the total sale amount, the date and time of purchase, the purchase channel, and any discounts available by discount category. I should also point out that we have returns included in this data set at negative sale amounts. The returns are also at the individual item level. So if a customer purchases perhaps 10 model airplane kits of differing SKUs, we have the 10 different items available in the data set, and if they return the 7th one, we know specifically that that was the one that they returned. There are each transaction on average has 4.5 products, but you'll see that it's skewed very heavily to smaller number of products. 73% of the transactions contain 5 or fewer. There's also, for transactions having 2 or more different SKUs, so independent of the quantity, different SKUs have an average price of $125. But again, you can see from this graph that it is heavily skewed as in the data. If we look at the total spend per week by sample group, we'll see that, as I mentioned before, the commercial purchasers purchase at a significantly higher volume than the known consumer households. You'll see that they also follow different spikes. There's big dips right around December 23rd or 24th, or perhaps even, dare I say, December 25th, whereas the known consumer households seem to be a bit more steady, with a little bit build up in the spring of 2013. You'll see the randomly sampled customers follow the same pattern as the known consumer households, but at a slightly lower rate. So let's look now at an individual purchaser. This is, before we were looking at aggregate numbers across all of the customers. Let's look at one specific customer. This is Bob. These are all the transactions that Bob did in our observation window, and you can see that there are different spikes along the way, and towards the end, Bob does just a little bit of shopping, not very much dollar amount towards the end of the time. You'll see if we add in Joan, a second customer, she follows a very much different pattern where she has bigger spikes in a shorter period of time. She also returned something, so you see there's one transaction that has a fully negative amount. And so these are two known customers, but they have very different purchasing patterns. If we add in a third person, Carlos purchases a whole lot, even bigger spikes, so big that the spikes go off the scale. In fact, if we were to zoom the scale out, you would see that Carlos dwarfs Joan and Bob by quite a bit. so we just wanted to illustrate that there are the kinds of customers in the data set are very, very different over time. But let's zoom back down. Let's not worry about Carlos for now. Let's just look at Bob and Joan. Again, this is showing the total transaction amount over time. However, if we zoom in and look at the details and look at how many products are they purchasing at any one transaction, you'll see that this is a visualization that shows how many products relative to the size of the circle they're purchasing. And as we look at Bob in orange, we'll see that he has bigger circles that tend to get smaller over time. Purchased a lot up front, and then over time he gets smaller and smaller. Whereas Joan, she seems to have a consistently medium number of products in every purchase that she makes. Now you might be saying, well, what does this data actually look like? So here's an example of Bob's purchases. These are not all of Bob's purchases, but it is some of them. And so you can see that he's in the known consumer segment. We see the ID. We see what channel he was in. We see the location ID or the store number. We even actually see which register in the store he used over time. And then we'll see the transaction ID, which is kind of the one basket at any one purchase that has the transaction date, the number of items, the price, and the SKU or the individual products that he was buying. So we'll see that on May 25th, the first two rows, he purchased two things for, it looks like about $9. Then he went away for about a week, came back on June 3rd, where he purchased a bunch of other things that were for a smaller amount. And then he came back almost about 6 weeks later, on July 13th, and bought a single thing for $3.28. Then on the 9/20, he came back and purchased some more, and 9/21. So that just gives you the sense, the sample of what Bob's purchases look like. Here's Joan's purchases, similar data. And similar layout, but you can see that she tends to purchase more things at any one time and a little bit tighter together. This is only from April 22nd to April 30th in the data set for her. So that was looking at purchases by customers. Now let's look a little bit at purchases by department. We'll see that some departments are consistently purchased frequently and in high volume with similar peaks and valleys. But we also have some departments that are purchased consistently at low volume. Each line in this graph represents the number of transactions that were at least one product from that department was purchased. And some departments are purchased more seasonally with large swings up and down. I don't know. Perhaps those are Thanksgiving turkeys that people are purchasing. No, this is not a supermarket, or this is not the sort of thing that you would purchase here. So they're seasonal. However, things are again looking at basket analysis. Here's some example product associations. We looked at 10 random subcategories, just picked them randomly. So this is comparing baskets that are or transactions that use, for example, subcategory E. So they had one or more products from category E, and you'll see that about 6% of them had at least one product, one SKU from category C in them. So you can. This is column conditional on row, so you can see the distant distribution. However, it turns out that products are purchased from subcategories are purchased together quite a bit. In fact, for subcategory H, almost a third of all baskets with category H in them also have products from category H. Different SKUs, but different products. So as an example we put on here from the craft store, it's much more likely in this data set that a customer will purchase multiple skeins of yarn rather than yarn and something else like a hot glue gun. So that is the data, and I believe that we have some questions from the audience. And so, Will, this is probably a question for you. How does the data sponsor currently define a project? Do they have a clear conceptual definition of the projects that they'd be happy to identify?
That is an excellent question, and one of the reasons why we're looking to get some help. I think the example that Ben used around a craft store is reasonable. I think another example of a type of purchase that would apply would be if you were shopping for products at an auto store. The nature of our challenge is we would, for instance, like to be able to figure out when someone is changing their oil by looking at the products they buy, and if they're buying oil, a funnel, an oil filter, et cetera, and being able to somehow cluster those products together to learn that when they co-occur, we can, with some degree of certainty, determine that that is in fact why they were in the store. So part of our challenge is no one raises their hand in our stores and tells us exactly why they're there, but we're hoping to look at the contents of their baskets to come up with some intuitive project groupings empirically.
Okay. And do you have a concern about particular types of projects? Is there a dollar value above which or below which you're no longer interested? If I'm spending $3 to make cupcakes, do you care that it's only $3, or is that project just as important as a major event?
I think you'd want to apply good business logic. If it's a small dollar value project, but it occurs extremely frequently, we would obviously be concerned with that. But in general, I think you're correct to assume that we're most interested in higher dollar projects. And I think when you look at the data, it will be fairly evident what size transactions are sufficiently outlying the rest of the data to indicate that they were a major project.
Okay, great. We have another question. Are there new store openings during the observation period? I didn't check specifically, but I think there are some.
There may be some. I think that the store open date data is contained in the sample, so that should be apparent to people. But I think the degree to which that is occurring during the sample data period is sufficiently small that it's not material.
Okay, great. Another question. Can you elaborate on the data available about customers? How extensive is it beyond zip code and basic demographics? I think that we can safely say that it is quite extensive for project-related data, but I don't know that we can be more specific than that. Will, is there any thoughts about what more we can say about customer demographics or customer data?
I mean, we have their transaction history. We have their the marketing campaigns that they have received. It sounds like the crux of this question is more around what specific demographic fields are contained in the people table. I think you hit on the high points. We know some geographic information about where they live. We know basic demographics and some age and income information. I may just have to defer that question. I don't recall exactly which fields are in there. You probably, Ben, have a better sense of the scope of what is included in our sample relative to other demographic cuts that you've seen.
Okay. If there is specific questions about data that you need for your research, please feel free to reach out to the email address that I listed before, and I'll list it again as we go further along, and we can answer any specific questions, like if you need customer height or weight, I can let you know whether or not that data is in there. Although I'll save you an email, neither customer height nor weight is included in this data set. Okay, another question. Will, what percentage of the retailer's business is from commercial customers versus known households?
Sorry, I was reading the wrong question. What percent of the retailers from commercial versus known households? I don't know that I can give the exact numbers. Most of overall sales come from consumers, and I will leave it at that.
Okay, great. Another question. We mentioned that the data provides sales channel. Does that mean that there are several different distribution channels, for example, online or different types of stores? Yes, there are several different distribution channels, and those channels are available in the data set. But again, if you're a specific channel that you are concerned about or wondering about, please feel free to email us, and we will be happy to talk more about what is available. Okay, another question. Do we know any policies or conditions that may be associated with the returns of products? Will, can you speak to policies in general, and then I can speak, perhaps I'll start by saying in the data there is no specific information about policies or procedures or conditions. However, Will, could you speak generally to policies about returns of products?
Sure. So I would say that our return policies are not dissimilar from what you would expect from other retailers. And if there are specific questions about that from around selected proposals, we're happy to share the details of whatever those policies might be.
Okay. So if I make cupcakes and then eat them, I can't return the mix, for example. But we're not talking about cupcakes. Okay. So another question. Do we have response history of marketing campaigns, customers who opened the email or those who clicked on a link in the email? That data, unfortunately, is not part of this data set. I don't know if that's data that you even collect, Will, but it is that response data is not included. Instead, we look at transaction history for marketing influence. Does that summarize
that's
marketing data?
That's correct.
Great. Okay. So moving on, I would like to just kind of reiterate again the key research question that we're looking to answer is kind of how should retail transactions be understood or analyzed when customers may be engaged in projects. And that leads to these kind of sub-questions. Can we determine what sets of products? Can we make a project materials list? What can we detect when they're in a project, given that they won't always be involved in a project? Can you predict a customer's next trip, or more importantly, the next big project? Is there a natural order? Is there opportunity for targets or promotions based on prior behavior or their projects that they might be interested in? And can we identify what products or services involved with a project might be purchased elsewhere? Can you determine share of wallet? But, however, we're also interested in unique and novel research areas using this same data. This is a very rich data set, provides opportunities for all sorts of examination and analysis, and we're open to proposals on any topic that might be appropriate. I think there are a few more questions from the audience. What would you say would be the duration for a project? Any chance that a same individual customer may engage in the same type of project several times in the window covered in this data? As I understand, Will, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's one of the big differences between the consumer households and the commercial purchasers, that the consumer households might only do one or two or a few projects in the observation window, while the commercial purchasers will probably do more projects more frequently in the observation window, but they'll tend not to do multiple different kinds of projects.
I think that's one way of looking at it. You definitely have more repeat purchases, higher average transaction with our commercial customers. But one of the other dynamics in play is different types of projects will have natural repeat rates or latency latency to them. So when I change the oil on my car, I do it every 3,000 miles. So maybe I do more than one of those in a year. But a complete engine rebuild on my car, I might only ever do once. So some of it will depend on the nature of the project. But absolutely, you may have commercial customers who specialize in certain types of projects and might have a repeat rate that is much higher than a non-commercial customer.
So a commercial customer might be rebuilding rebuilding engines every day or
Correct.
Every week, but they won't tend to also be doing body work, perhaps.
Correct.
Okay, great. Another question is, do we have a list of projects that we have some basic knowledge of? Can we roughly describe them, and can that list be shared with researchers? I think, how would you respond to this question?
Sure. So I might be cheating the process a little bit. We would be happy to talk with researchers once we reviewed proposals and describe the types of projects that we think about. But I think once our company name is revealed, your own intuition will very quickly bring you to a intuitive list of products or projects.
But there is also an opportunity for latent projects, right? Ones that you never even thought about.
Absolutely. But I think this is not an esoteric enough industry to be not able to think of projects immediately when you realize the business that we're in.
Great. Okay. So another question, similarly to the projects, does the project always have a timeline? For example, will the customers always purchase some items before others? And
we don't know. I don't think we know. I think you laid out a great example up front that occasionally we will have a customer that has planned everything out very well in advance and will purchase all required materials in one transaction at one time. We will have others who kind of are more forgetful, and they will return and make follow-on transactions to complete their project. And still others may purchase 80% of project materials with us, and then even purchase the rest of it from a competitor or a different channel, et cetera. So again, part of what I think we're looking for help with is a reasonable approach might be to find all those that were mindful enough to purchase everything at once, and then go looking for all those other customers that had partial projects and completed them later or not at all.
Great. Okay. And then, if I'm correct, a further complication could be that they buy 100% of the products for this particular project, but since they happen to be in the store, they're also buying a product or two.
Absolutely. There may be noise in those baskets of unrelated products to where you would need to distill down to the core contents of that basket.
Okay. Great. So I don't think there are any other questions at this time, but again, feel free to submit questions either on the screen or afterwards in email, and we're happy to follow up with you. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of participating in this research opportunity. You have access to this really unique data. You're not going to be able to get this data anywhere else. You'll have assistance from WCAI with data cleaning, preparation, and processing at any point during the research opportunity. You'll have the number one thing, as Will remind us again, that you'll have access, you'll know who the company is, and you'll have teleconference Q&A sessions with the sponsor for opportunities to interact. You'll have an opportunity to present the findings specifically to the corporate sponsor at a closing symposium to be held here at Wharton 1 year from now. Notice that attendance by at least one team member is required. You'll have a potential for additional PR for your research, and you'll have promotion of your research paper through the WCAI SSRN Research Paper Series. As I mentioned at the beginning, you do need to submit a proposal. The proposal should be no longer than 2,000 words and include the following things that you see, the bullet points here. You'll see also that we request that it be submitted via PDF. This information about the content of the proposal is available on our website, so no need to memorize or take down detailed notes at this point. To submit a proposal, you can read more about it at the link there. You can submit proposals at the second link that's on the slide. No later, the due date is Wednesday, June 11th, 2 weeks from now. Proposals should only be submitted through the URL, and we'd really prefer a single PDF with all the components. Your proposals will be evaluated for both academic contribution and potential to significantly improve the research sponsor's marketing practice. You'll see the list of people who will be reviewing the proposals, including UCLA, University of Iowa, and several people from WCAI, and finally the sponsor themselves. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to that email address that's listed, wcai-research@wharton.upenn.edu. We will answer. We did not get time to answer every single question that was submitted, but we do follow up with every single question and make sure that you get an answer to it. If this data set is not ideal for your research, you will have the opportunity to look at other ones, including some upcoming research opportunities like a desktop software use analysis coming up in the next few months, and there should be 2 or 3 more research opportunities in the fall. You can also find us at the SSRN Research Paper Series. A link to that is also available on our website. And we regularly post announcements to our website, wcai.wharton.upenn.edu. Will and the rest of the team, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate this opportunity and the opportunity to share this data with researchers around the world. And we look forward to your proposal and looking what you would like to research coming up. Thank you.